speculation is running rampant about the Ukrainian crossing into Kherson. But I'm going to break down just what I think is happening, what the information we have is, and what might be happening next. I'm Paul, U.S. Army combat veteran. It's August 9th, 2023. This is your daily Ukraine update. Let's get into it. Okay, first, let's take a look at the combat map. This is the control map has not yet been updated, but what I found interesting about the last 24 hours is Ukrainian armed forces reporting what they describe as partial success, which usually means some level of territorial advancement without necessarily flipping control of a major town. This has happened in Uruzane, Bryutine, Verbobe, and south of Bakhmut. So you can see here they're reporting again advances near this Verbove, which is due east of Robotyne, but also interesting because you can see that this territory is actually to the south of the southern tip of Robotyne, and actually is more eastern. It has the same latitude of Novoprokopivka, indicating that again Ukrainian forces probably not announcing the liberation of Robotyne, but that this salient is more secured probably than is currently indicated. When we look over at Staromayorsk and Uruzane, you can see again Ukrainian forces reporting some partial success. They're actually indicating that the northern blocks of Uruzane have been liberated. Again, an indicator that Russian forces probably not long for this town. When we look north to Bakhmut, you can see again, this is reporting a series of advances outside of Klachivka as Ukrainian forces are pushing the Russians to this rail line that Russia seems to have designated as a sort of defensive wall that is going to be much tougher to break out of. Again, you can see most of Kurdyumivka, even this area near Andriivka, all being posted as at least contested. And again, the reality on the ground is going to be different from this, obviously. Sometimes you're going to see them push back. Sometimes you're going to see them push forward. It's war. The fog of war is real, and you shouldn't take any of this. While generally Ukrainian defense forces don't report things unless they're at least true, the exact details will come out, will likely be adjusted over time. Russian forces, you can see, launching substantial counterattacks in Staromayorsk, again, continuing their unbroken offensive effort outside of Donetsk, as well as counterattacking in these areas south of Bakhmut, as well as in the north. Now, let's talk a little bit about this crossing over the Dnipro. And the reason I want to talk about it is because, well, it's maybe nothing, and it may be substantive, right? It's hard to determine it. So the general reporting, as we talked about yesterday, is this: that there were reports that some number of Ukrainian armed forces landed at Kozache Laheri, this village here. They crossed the Dnipro and purportedly penetrated up to 800 meters into Russian held territory, reportedly even breaking an initial defensive line. But there's more info that has definitely come out since this, right? Obviously, on Twitter, things are a little tough to determine exactly what's happening. But as you can see, there's some geolocated footage indicating that there is shelling taking place outside of the area. Right? The ISW is, of course, tweeting that they are observing the events. Here is Kozachi Laheri, and there is reportedly, again, some combat happening, but as you can see, they haven't updated any control situation, simply transiting this to a dotted line. And I think you also have, of course, some social media posts by purportedly by Russian forces of POWs that may or may not have been, that are purportedly captured there. Some of these maps, again, people are releasing simply depicting Kozachi Lahiri as being part of a larger salient. But generally, what seems to be occurring is there's even actually, some of these posters are claiming there's a second advance near Oleshki. And the reason, I think when you look at things in total, some of the reporting that seems more credible to me is that this was a night operation with 7 Ukrainian boats with up to 7 right, they call them DRGs, I think designated reconnaissance groups, so like a semi-special forces. So around 50 soldiers drop in a smoke screen and taking advantage of an enemy transition of forces, right, as VDV were pulled out and moved to Zaporizhzhia. They were replaced with recently mobilized troops with less experience and less awareness. And that they took advantage of that to launch a raid. It says they landed and advanced unhindered to camps, which are probably fortified positions that the mobilized troops were moving into. And then eventually, when Russian troops got wind of the Ukrainian raid, they were pushed back and crossed back over the Dnipro to Ukrainian territory. There is some reporting, again, this is as of a couple of, looks like about 12 hours ago. Some people are reporting that Ukrainian forces have taken Kozachi Lahiri and are beginning to flank around, or have flanked around Kozachi Lahiri, progressed deeper into Russian territory, and are now flanking around Chelberta, another town. I'm skeptical of this because that would involve a lot of movement and would not necessarily be tactically advantageous, right? If you're going to establish a bridgehead, then establish a bridgehead. And the safest bridgehead is always going to be near areas you control. As you can see, artillery, even small arms fire positioned along this bank where Ukrainians control can actually provide support to forces in Kozachi Lahiri. But they couldn't provide it to Chelberta. And the deeper you go in, the more likely it is. Again, imagine you are in Chelberta. How would you get out if you had to? Well, there's only a couple of routes in and out. So you would have little choice. The Russians would likely block these routes, block your ability to get out of the city, effectively ending your chances of escape. In contrast, in Kozachi Lahiri, there's a lot of ways out, especially for a small unit like 50 people, especially operating with some boats. The chances of being able to return are much greater. I think what this was ultimately was a raid. I think that's why you saw them take POWs. There were also some stories about a Russian reconnaissance unit being captured, having POWs taken, as well as electronics and maps. So I think this may have been a raid, strategically timed in order to deter the Russians from further replacing forces in Kherson, and to prevent them from being diverted and sent to the Zaporizhzhia front, as well as a raid to secure for Ukraine valuable intelligence. I think that's probably what happened here. Generally, if you see a 50-person unit cross over, that's not going to be something that's going to become a permanent bridgehead. It's going to be a much more discreet, more short-term operation. Anyway, guys, if you're interested in the latest combat footage, and certainly we'll analyze it when it comes out here, you want to go to combatvetnews.com. It's the #1 way to support the channel. You can see we're checking out the combat footage that I can't show you anywhere else. And whenever there's a viral video, at least once a week, sometimes twice a week, we do these video breakdowns. Any one of these tiers will get you access. It's the best way to support the channel, the best way to keep me independent. Certainly, the powers that be, the YouTube, Patreon, all sorts of big tech platforms, TikTok. They just don't care for my content. That's why I had to launch my own site. So if you want to support me, that's the way to do it. As always, guys, thank you to our Colonel tier members of combatvetnews.com. Thank you to our Lieutenant tier members. And be sure to stay tuned because we have something big being announced coming up here, a way to support Ukraine. Truly, I think it's going to be a win-win-win. And I'm excited to tell you guys more about it, but not yet. Soon. Cheers. See you in the next one.